Dan Cohen here with MintPress News. We are live streaming tonight I'm in Washington, D.C., 7:30 p.m. on a nice Wednesday evening. Um, we're going to be talking about Haiti, which is a really important subject that gets not a lot of talk, not a lot of coverage, and not a lot of accurate coverage, even the small amount that it does. Um, we're going to be talking with Kim Ives, who's going to join me in just a second. And so everyone, please, please, please tune in whatever channel you're seeing this in, share all over the place, and make sure that you um, help us beat censorship and the algorithms that are drowning us out and hiding our reporting, and join our Telegram chat. So far, Telegram seems to be a pretty free space, so it should be dropped in the comments in the chat. I'm just gonna make sure it is. Yeah, there we go. So if you see in our comments, there's our Telegram channel, MintPress News. Follow that. You can also follow me on Telegram, at Dan Cohen 3000. I'm the 3000th Dan Cohen. It's ubiquitous name among the tribe members. But so tonight's gonna be kind of a not a standard format interview. Um, I've had the incredible privilege to work really closely to collaborate with Kim over the last year since the July 7th, 2021 assassination of President Jovenel Moise. That kind of spurred into action this project, this three-part documentary series that Kim and I have been working on and is concluding very soon. And we're going to announce a release date shortly. But so this is not going to be exactly a standard interview. I mean, Kim is the real expert here on Haiti. He's been working there since, sorry, Kim, but before I was born. And is speaks fluent Creole, is real deal expert, knows the ground extremely well. And I was fortunate to spend some time there with him on multiple occasions, and look forward to doing so again in the future. But so we're going to kind of keep it conversational, and I think it'll be really, informative, and for everyone who's watching. And this is one of those things where our reporting, I feel like we're presenting things that you're not going to get anywhere else, particularly with the subject matter that we're going to be talking about, which is Jimmy Cherizier and the G9, which is the subject of very, very heated debate among anti-imperialists, anti-war people, who are paying attention to Haiti in the U.S. and Canada. And we've taken a lot of flack for our position, but as you'll see in the documentary and our reporting, you will see will be vindicated. So, without further ado, I'm gonna bring in Kim. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you very much, Dan. Glad to be here.
So there's a major development going on in Haiti right now, which, if you're kind of following the anti-imperialist news outlets in general, you wouldn't know. Haiti Liberté has been the only outlet to report on it, basically because of your connections on the ground in Haiti to people who are closely observing this ongoing battle. So why don't you've just published an article, which I'm going to pull up so everyone can see. Here it is, called "In Cite Soleil, the G9 Federation in All-Out War with JPEP." So, Kim, why don't you just first tell us what is your article about, and what is the situation in Port-au-Prince, the capital of Haiti, right now?
Well, the G9 was formed in July 2020, and it was really an alliance of the different uh, armed committees which existed throughout the shanty towns. And they're called gangs, often in the press, and they use the moniker of gangs kind of across the board in Haiti. That is, anybody who's poor with a gun is a gang member. But if you go in to detail and look closely, it's far from that. It's a very different situation. In fact, it's a little bit like the West in the US back in the 19th century. You had criminals who would go out there and were the robbers, the bad guys who would rob stagecoaches and banks and so forth, and rustle cattle. And then you had the vigilantes who would chase them down and sometimes hang them from a tree, that kind of thing. Um, a little bit, that's the situation in Haiti today. You have the state has been deeply weakened by neoliberalism over the past 40 years. The, uh, the population is really left to its own devices. And in the countryside, it's often been like that, really since Haiti was born, where if you were a thief or a murderer or a criminal of some sort, and you went into a town in the countryside, a lot of the time, if you were caught, you'd be met by a bunch of guys with machetes, and they'd make mincemeat of you. Um, that wasn't so much the case in the cities, where there was more of, we could say, bourgeois structures of state, police, and courts, and so forth. Uh, but that has really disintegrated with the weakening of the state in Haiti, really since the time of the Duvalier regime's fall in 1986, and continuing through the real chemotherapy that began after Jean Bertrand Aristide was elected in 1990. And that's when the US said, we really have to shut down this question of Haitians having their own government. And they really began to just dismantle the state and establish what we call in Haiti the Republic of the NGOs. That is, everything is given to NGOs, which is one of the great misnomers in history, non-governmental organization. They're all governmental. You know, they're working either for the US government or the British government or the French government or the Spanish or the Swedish. So these NGOs basically get the lion's share of the aid that's pumped into Haiti. And we saw it during the earthquake, where 99 cents of every dollar of the much vaunted $3 billion, which was supposedly given to Haiti, went, in fact, only one penny of it went to the Haitian government. The rest went to NGOs and to pay back various other state entities that were foreign state entities that were, quote unquote, helping Haiti. So, with that debilitation of the state, even the police force has been debilitated, and it controls nothing, and it has no rapport with the people. People don't trust it. It's usually very corrupt. The policemen often don't have, um, uh, gas to put in their cars. They can't pay their rent, et cetera, et cetera. So this meant that gangs flourished in many of the communities. But what happened, for instance, and this is one of the things we go to in our film, in a community like Delma 6, in lower Delma is one of the main arteries of Port-au-Prince. It was an area which had a gang, which was accosting the residents of the area.
I feel like,
And
let me interrupt you for a second. I feel like we should maybe talk about the kind of formation of the G9 after we kind of talk about the current. I think about the current situation in Cité Soleil, where the battle is happening.
oh, okay, good.
So
Yeah.
people
So
understand, and then we'll have a lot to discuss about the formation of the G9 and the background that, how we got to this point where there's this major
yeah.
battle happening. But the piece you wrote, is that I'll bring it back up. I mean, is that there's an all-out war, the G9 Federation. So you have the G9 Federation, and I'll just say a few words and let you take it over. The G9 Federation, which is a federation of 9 plus, originally 9 armed groups that has now expanded to more, is in a battle, as you call it, an all-out war with what's called the JPEP. Um, so the G9 is led by Jimmy Cherizier, a former cop who's also known as Barbecue, former cop basically turned revolutionary and who was burned by the system. And they're in a war with the JPEP, which is kind of their sort of, I don't know if if arch rival is quite the correct term, but in terms of armed group on the ground, it's the main, seems like the main rival. So what exactly is happening in this is what I want people to understand right now, like what's happening in Cité Soleil.
Okay, good. So the JPEP, and this happens often in Haiti. And Dan, I just want to say your voice sometimes goes down. Your mic, I'm not sure if it's a
Oh,
question of
is that
directional on the mic, but
is
you're
that
good right. You're good right now. But before you sort of faded out a little bit.
Oh, okay. So oh yeah,
Yeah,
I see that. I see that. That's all right. I'll see what's going on here because I can actually hear it in my ear too.
right now
I'll work on that.
you're loud and clear now.
Right.
Um,
Okay. Thank you though.
yeah,
Go ahead.
so this is typical in Haiti. I remember in the 1980s when the a National Popular Assembly, a nationwide popular organization, was being formed. They uh, rolled it out at the St. John Bosco Church, headed by Father Jean Bertrand Aristide at the time in 1987. And it rapidly began to take over all of Haiti. And very quickly, they rolled out a kind of a copycat version of the APN, as it was called, the National Popular Assembly, Assemblée Populaire Nationale. And it was, now I'm trying to remember the name. What was it called? It was, anyway, they rolled out another version. So JPEP is really that. The G9 came out and it started to capture the imagination of people. So they made a copycat version to sort of pretend to be the same thing. And they've even done a kind of a press conference similar to what Jimmy Cherizier does, because Jimmy Cherizier is constantly speaking to the people, explaining what they're trying to do, what they're trying to make. And we say a cop turned revolutionary. He is an aspiring revolutionary, and in many ways, may fall short. He doesn't have a lot of maybe the book knowledge and theoretical background that some revolutionaries have, Marxists, etc. But he has come up against the hard realities of betrayal by the ruling class, and is a very sharp, smart guy, very articulate. And so the JPEP has tried to do the same thing, hold these press conferences and say we want to get housing for people, etc. But it's what they call in Creole a grimace, of fake. It doesn't mean anything, and it's not sustained, and it's not real. So the basic conflict that we have in Haiti today is between these criminal gangs, which are kidnapping, extorting market women, raping young girls, thieving, robbing, um, and the I could say that what were called vigilance brigades back in the period right after Jean-Claude Duvalier fell in 1986, 87, the Makuts, who no longer had the government there to protect them, or less protection, I could say, from the government, began to do marauding into popular neighborhoods, and organizations started to arm themselves, first with machetes, then pots and pans, then guns, and fight back. And they were called vigilance brigades. So these vigilance brigades have sort of grown to become what we'll talk about later, these forces which fight the criminals and say, you better not come in our neighborhood. Now, the mainstream press presents this simply as gangs. It's just two gangs fighting and one's as bad as the other, but no, they're not. One is talking not just about protecting their neighborhood and improving the lives of their people, but actually overthrowing the whole system, which puts their neighborhoods in such poverty and squalor. So, really, what we're seeing is a confrontation between these two groups, but these are the front lines. Behind them are the real powers, the bourgeoisie, which profits from and perpetuates this terrible dichotomy, much as in this country, in the society. So right now, JPEP has been the principal, I could say, an agent of one of the principal bourgeois, shall we say, Wizard of Oz behind the screen trying to run everything, a guy called Reginald Boulos, who may be involved in his name has often been cited as possibly one of the people who were the intellectual authors of Jovenel Moïse's assassination a year and 6 days ago, or he was behind a supporter of the coup d'etats against Jean-Bertrand Aristide. He's very close to the State Department. He was born in the U.S., in fact. He was a U.S. citizen. He changed his citizenship back to Haitian, I think at the age of 18 or 19. I don't fully know the reasons, maybe some ambitions of some sort. But long and short of it, the guy is very wealthy, and basically JPEP is his proxy in Cité Soleil, where he has a lot of business interests. He used to have a clinic there. He's a doctor, medical doctor by profession, now a businessman. But so JPEP, headed by this guy called Jean-Pierre Gabriel, called T. Gabriel there, has really been his pawn. And he attacked one of the G9 members, and part of the G9 full name is mess with one, you mess with all. So they're just swarming on this area. And as our contacts have told us, they said, it's time to finish with JPEP. They don't want it. Now, the worst part of it, and I'll just maybe close with that, Dan, is that they've merged with the Katsa Maozo, the 400 Maozo, which people may have seen the name. This was the gang led by a total sociopath, a guy called La Mort Saint Jour, Death Without Day, a guy who kidnapped 17 North American missionaries last year. It was all very bizarre. They sort of wandered out of where they were being held. Never clear whether any ransom was paid. They kidnapped some French missionaries before that. They kidnapped Turkish missionaries. In short, they were responsible for 80% of the kidnappings in Haiti by one of the estimates. And they have merged with G9, with JPEP to become this sort of alliance. So you have the worst scoundrels, the worst kidnapping scoundrels, combined with the worst political scoundrels facing off against the G9.
Okay, so I'll try to kind of reflect back some of what you said to make, kind of make sure everyone got what you laid out. So currently in the slum of Cité Soleil, which is right in Haiti's the port of Port-au-Prince, one of the most important areas for everybody. This is, I mean, it's just one of the absolute worst slums, just some of the most extreme poverty in the world. And this is where this major battle is going on with how many deaths are there? Do you know, Ken?
Well, as of yesterday, they were saying, I mean, the official count was 52, I think, reported by the Miami Herald. Our sources in the G9 said it was over 50. Um, they say it might be much more. They don't know how many people JPEP has lost, but they themselves have lost somewhere on the order of 25 or 30 people, 30 fighters. So the fighting is extremely fierce in those areas. You're talking about tin shacks. It's not like you even have that much cover down there. So it's all these little warrens of I mean, you and I were out filming there, or we're out there, and we have a lot of filming from there by some of our Haitian comrades. Um, so yeah, it's a very treacherous area to be fighting, and I think that the uh, battle is going to spread outwards to the north to the area called Quadribuque, which is the base of Katsamaozo. And there's an area just north of Port-au-Prince called Cano, which is a sort of a flood plain, which used to be deserted 12 years ago before the earthquake. There was nothing there. It was just kind of scrubland and so forth. And then after the earthquake, when people's houses fell down and they had nowhere to live, um, they all went out there and they built, sort of shacks. And these shacks have become houses or more permanent shacks. And that is the area where a lot of the battle seems to be also spreading to. So we could see this fighting between the JPEP Katsam Maozo 400 Maozo grouping with G9 growth.
Okay, so fi- so yesterday, Miami Herald reports 52 dead in this battle in Cité Soleil, in this impoverished slum of tin shacks, and um, which is very densely populated as well. So obviously, for anyone living there, it's horrible, and you can be caught in the crossfire.
Right.
Um, so the G9, as you were explaining, is an alliance of armed groups that basically are trying to stamp out criminal networks, that are trying to get rid of kidnapping and stealing and rapists from their neighborhoods, which have largely been, well, their enemies are basically criminal networks that have been supported by the oligarchs of Haiti, that basically see the whole thing as just a way to make profit and keep people fighting each other. So as long as they're fighting each other and you keep giving them guns, then the profit keeps coming in the factories and the sweatshops, and everything's great for these oligarchs, who many of which are tied to the US. On the other side, who the G9 is fighting, as you were explaining, you have the JPEP, led by a guy whose nickname is T. Gabriel, and this guy is just essentially a gangster who is on the payroll and very close with one of the biggest oligarchs in the country, Reginald Boulos, who
Mhm.
has a long history of collaborating with the U.S. State Department. As you published, Haiti Liberté published WikiLeaks uh, cables showing that he was actually paying the Haitian National Police as a private army. Um, so those are kind of the two sides here battling it out. I think, for me, one of the most useful ways to understand the kind of myriad of armed groups operating in um in Port-au-Prince is looking at the Syria model, where after the US regime change project began in really like 2011 in Syria, just a whole patchwork of countless armed groups popped up. Strongmen emerged with the um, kind of near collapse of the state, funded and armed by foreign countries, led by the United States. And so you have all these different armed groups, fighting each other, doing this, that, and then, but they all kind of ended up sort of congealing around their principal orientation. And so on one side, you had the Free Syrian Army, which was supported by the CIA, and a number of countries, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, et cetera, and it was um, and this was called the moderate rebels. And so I would compare this to the JPEP, it seems. I mean, tell me if you think this analogy holds up. Um, So the JPEP maybe is the Free Syrian Army, and then they collaborated closely. The Free Syrian Army collaborated closely with ISIS, which in this case, which the most extreme criminal network in Syria, and was ISIS, of course. And in the Haitian the Haitian version of this is the
Castle
400
Mouse.
Mauzo.
Yeah.
Exactly, the 400 Mauzo. So, which is now um, reportedly joined the fight uh, with the JPEP in Cité Soleil, correct?
Correct.
So,
So, mhm,
so let me just take this a little bit
yeah,
further. So
yeah.
we
No, it's
have
an interesting analogy. I'd never thought of it like that, but you're I think quite correct.
So, I mean, you have basically, the friendly face, which of course the JPEP is not being promoted in media the same way that the Free Syrian Army was. This is not as big of a regime change project. This is more of kind of a low level, continued intense project, and there's not really a regime to overthrow that they're trying to overthrow in Haiti. There's a status quo that they're trying to maintain. So it's a different situation, but nonetheless, I think the analogy really holds up. So you have the JPEP, Free Syrian Army,
Mhm.
and then you have the Katso Maozo, the 400 Maozo, which is the biggest kidnapping gang in Haiti, and they, known for many kidnappings. Earlier this year, there was a report that they're responsible for 80% of Haiti's kidnappings, and so um, you know they as Kim said, they kidnapped 17 American missionaries in a very
North
strange.
American. One was Canadian.
Oh,
16
okay.
Americans. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. um yeah, so they kidnapped these 17 North American missionaries, almost all of them from the US, one from Canada, and held them for a while, and then this became a way for figures in the U.S. to talk about military intervention in Haiti. There were several reports, I'm sorry, there were several op-eds from the Washington Post editorial board calling for military intervention into Haiti. Most of them coming directly after the assassination of Jovenel Moise, but the kidnapping of those missionaries became, another pretext for intervention.
I think we
And
counted 5 or 6, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was
It's
incredible
ridiculous. Yeah.
how many there were. The Washington Post, in other words, the CIA was just begging, just wanted intervention so bad. But with Biden, just withdrawing from Afghanistan, obviously the public didn't really have an appetite to get involved in something else, and the U.S. much prefers, particularly in this age, as Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State, laid out when he was under consideration to be appointed. He, said this is we want to do stuff by proxy now. So not so much direct involvement. We want to do stuff by proxy. So they're really leaning on the Haitian National Police to do the dirty work, to basically carry out their agenda in Haiti. And again, you have the JPEP and the 400 Mauzo, the most heinous criminal network. And those missionaries were, as you were saying, they were sort of, it was sort of mysterious how they were released, and it led to a lot of speculation that this was kind of an operation, or there was something, that wasn't exactly true about this, or that the U.S. or the Haitian government or the police had some kind of line in to the 400 Mauzo, that there was something very fishy about it, the way it became an instant pretext for intervention. However, that said, we don't really know what happened. It could be totally just a real kidnapping operation, and the money was quietly paid. No one actually knows anything publicly. But so on the other side of this analogy, you have the G9, which, I mean, in the Syria analogy, I think you could compare to like Hezbollah or the Syrian army or Iran, basically these different armed groups or countries coming together to roll back what they see as kind of an existential threat. And so they, despite totally different ideologies, the Syrian army versus and Hezbollah and the Islamic revolutionaries of Iran, they have totally different ideologies and are not totally compatible, but they saw US imperialism as and ISIS and Al Qaeda as an existential threat. And so that united them. And I think there's a real parallel to be made with Cherizier and the founding of the G9, even though this is, we're talking about one country, but basically strong men from different neighborhoods who emerged with the absence of any centralized, state that's providing services or security and criminal gangs running amok. They kind of, stepped in to say, we don't want this in our neighborhood and we're going to fight back against this. What do you make of the analogy? Do you think it's fair?
Spot on. Yeah, it's really true, and I think it's correct. But as I often say, I repeat this probably too often, but Haiti is always sort of a vanguard nation. It's always sort of leading history. Again, there's 1804. That was the first and last successful slave revolution in history, which was the touchstone for all the revolutions on the continents. Again, it was the Haitians who gave Miranda and Bolivar the boats, the printing presses, the soldiers, the weapons to fight the liberation struggle on the continent. And today we see in all their flags, you see the Haitian flag, the red and the blue in Venezuela or Colombia or Ecuador's flag. That's the Haitian flag. And then the yellow is supposed to be for the Latin nations. So you really have this, seminal role that Haiti played. And then again in 1990 with the election of Jean-Bertrand Aristide, the idea of using the electoral process and just creating a mass movement to take it. This was very much what Hugo Chavez and Evo Morales and Correa were all inspired by. And today, I think we see a new situation. Here we are, 2022. And as you recall, in 2019, just before COVID hit, there was basically a worldwide uprising. Everywhere, people were in the streets from India to Mexico to, across the planet, and in Haiti too. And a lot of this is a reflection of this incredible, I could say, lumpenization of the planet. You have these megalopolises, Sao Paulo, 18 million people, Mexico City, 18 million people, many of them living in an informal economy, selling Coca-Cola and chiclets and, some mango on a stick to survive. And this is essentially a seething cauldron. And in Haiti, it is in a way the first time that I can think of where you really see an autonomous. A lot of the time you'll hear organizations talking about autonomous organization of the masses. Well, this is what we're seeing in this G9 movement. It's an autonomous organization of the masses. This isn't any outside force coming to do it. And sometimes they say, the government set them. That's baloney. It's not true, just plain patently false. And this is the other problem we face today. Let me finish with that point. So in many ways, I think this model of, the organized underclass, proletariat and underproletariat with guns in hand, basically challenging the status quo. And yes, it's not entirely mature. But this is where the left, the people with, historical materialist understanding of history, can come and embrace them and do that. But this is where the laboratory of the U.S., as they call it in Haiti, they call it the U.S. imperialist CIA, Pentagon nexus, the laboratory, has become very sophisticated. They've turned the left. They find a way to capture the left, much as we see in this country, to fight it. So, through various ways, and we can get into that. Of course, that's what our film is supposed to be a remedy for. They've turned the left, which should be embracing the G9 and saying, oh, finally, you guys are there. Here we are. Here, let me give you this book. Read this pamphlet. This guy has a lot to think. You can learn something from Gramsci here. Whatever. But instead, they're saying, oh, these guys are monsters. They're criminals. They're terrible. And it's the is that the left has been weaponized by imperialism to fight these this autonomous, authentic uprising.
Let's get into that. Let's get into that conversation in a minute. Before we do that, I mean, because it's a really important conversation and um really needs to be flayed open. But to kind of wrap up the discussion about what's happening in Cité Soleil right now, where this battle is taking place. I mean, if we, basically these two fronts have emerged, united, and one of them is dedicated to armed revolution, and the other is a tool of the bourgeoisie to maintain the status quo of Haiti as a, a sweatshop for American, North American and French interests. And so this has been a long time in the making, and our documentary really kind of gives it gives the backdrop. Is how everyone can understand how it's gotten to this point. So it's an enormous development what's happening in Cité Soleil and in Port-au-Prince right now. And it's just incredible to me that there's no real media coverage. And to your point, the left has been really consumed. The left that is aware or paying attention to Haiti has really been consumed by the State Department narrative, kind of repackaged from various ways, through its various media outlets. And that is that the G9 is a tool of the state, was created by Jovenel Moise, was created, the now assassinated president, was created by the PHTK, which is the ruling party. And so our documentary, which we're again very close to releasing and really looking forward to getting out there so we can open this discussion up, debunks that. We examine all of the evidence, and there's really nothing there. And I mean, when I started this project with Kim, I mean, you remember
I remember very well. You said, "Listen, Kim, I'm going to go and see it, but I can't guarantee you that I'm going to agree with you." Yeah.
exactly. And so it was like, I don't know, I mean, let's go and see. And it turned out that Kim, what he was saying, checked out. And in particular, there are a number of massacres that Jimmy Cherizier and the G9 are accused of committing. And even, the first one is an area called Grand Ravine, but the main one, I think, that every New York Times, every Washington Post, every article in the mainstream media refers to is what they call the La Saline massacre.
Dan, should I be saying spoiler alert right here? I mean, because
No, I mean, I think I think we need to just come out,
yeah, okay.
come out and start establishing it.
Okay.
But I mean, we investigated in very detailed and deep manner, and there was no La Saline massacre. There was a gang fight, you could call it. I mean, I wouldn't
Terrible
even
gang
really.
fight. Yeah, terrible fight. Yeah.
I wouldn't even really characterize it as a gang fight so much as, it's between two kind of equals, or that it
Well,
was.
they'd formerly been friends. I mean, Bout Jean and T Junior used to be together.
Right.
Same thing
But
happened in Cité Soleil. Isca used to be with T Gabriel. They split.
but it was part of this process that we've been describing of removal of criminal networks.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
So
Right.
there's not really moral equivalence. So when we say gang fight, it just sounds like,
Right.
guys battling over turf just for their profits,
Right.
which is not really what it was. And so, we'll get deeper into that in the future when our documentary comes out, and we can show all of it, and you'll see the evidence for everyone who's watching. But the La Saline massacre has been used as a pretext by the U.S. Treasury Department to level Magnitsky sanctions against Jimmy Cherizier. And so Cherizier is the principal target of the United States, even though he is completely opposed to criminal acts like kidnapping, and robbery and these kinds of things, and works very hard to stamp it out, and has stamped it out within his neighborhoods, the neighborhoods that he kind of is in and protects, as well as the G9 itself. Um, Even to the point where he's held public demonstrations against kidnapping, and meanwhile, the 400 Mauzo, the most heinous kidnapping criminal enterprise in Haiti, is not under sanctions. The none of its members are under sanctions. Only Jimmy Cherizier. So to me, that's kind of the telltale sign of who is the enemy of the United
Right.
States in Haiti, and it's the guy who's basically the centerpiece of this armed, revolutionary movement. And I say that cautiously because, as you explained, as you were saying, Kim, they haven't succeeded in creating a revolution, but they intend to.
Yeah.
Um so so that
If
kind
I
of.
can just jump in there
Sure,
too
please,
and
please.
say, I mean, it was quite extraordinary last autumn when you had the 17 missionaries being held, and you had the two foremost U.S. diplomats in Haiti, a guy called Kenneth Merton, who was the chargé d'affaires in charge of the embassy, basically, and he was lambasting Jimmy Cherizier as a criminal. And then you had another guy who ended up quitting, supposedly an outrage, a fellow called Daniel Foote, who was going to be the emissary of Washington to Haiti. And he also had a real um, a real uh, tirade against Jimmy Cherizier, saying, he's not your friend, he's a bad guy, he's an enemy. All this time, the 400 the 400 Mauzo had these hostages in hand, and they weren't lambasting the leader of the 400 Mauzo. They weren't holding him up as the big danger. It was Cherizier. So you have this very ironic sort of, uh, one could even say, discordant presentation, where the guy who's fighting crime is the one who's being portrayed as the big danger, whereas the biggest criminal, we could say, is being basically ignored.
Right, exactly. I mean, there's a couple things I want to show here. First of all, um, there is um, this video from when Cherizier was accused, an ally of Cherizier, part of the G9, was accused of kidnapping a priest, or a pastor. I'm sorry, and Cherizier, the G9, and huge amounts of people in the neighborhood, the slum of La Saline, where he allegedly committed this massacre, held this. Cherizier had a press conference, and then there was a denouncing kidnapping, and there was a massive demonstration of, I mean, it looks like hundreds of people. If you can see on screen here.
Yeah. You can
Um,
see Cherizier over on the right hand side of the screen there with his,
yeah, you
yeah,
can you
there,
can
yeah,
see him here. I'll play the video. It's a short video from that day of this demonstration, but him denouncing kidnapping, denying the allegations, saying anyone who wants to come in here and look through our territory, everyone open their homes and allow them to. We don't have this pastor. This is all a lie. And it originated, the lie, actually from a guy named Pierre Esperance, who is the U.S. man in Haiti. He is funded by the National Endowment for Democracy. Sorry, he's the principal human rights
right,
figure in Haiti. Leads an organization called the what is it? National Network for the Defense of Human Rights, commonly
right.
known as the RNDDH. And the accusation came from him. And basically, he's full of gossip that uh, has no bearing to reality, and serves U.S. interests primarily. So I'm just going to show a quick clip from this, from from that demonstration. Wait, I don't think people can see the subtitles because we're kind of in the way. So I'm gonna turn you
Take us out. Yeah.
and me off, or maybe no, that doesn't work. Let's see. How about we do it like that? There we go. So now we're not on the screen.
But
Sorry
I'm
for
the
the
big one. You mean me?
You're the big one. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, you're
I'm
right.
seeing myself
Yeah,
big.
yeah, you're right. Sorry. Technical difficulties, folks. Stay with us.
It's
Promise.
okay. This is what makes it real, right?
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. How can we do this? All right. Here's what we're gonna do. Maybe like that. Nope. We're gonna do it like this. I'm gonna turn I'm gonna turn us off while we watch, and then we'll come back in.
Okay.
Okay, so there, I think that it really kind of shows what exactly the how people are feeling about Haiti or about barbecue. I mean, there were these accusations that Cherizier paid all those people to come out, but
Yeah.
pretty, for one thing, insulting. And if you've ever seen paid protesters, you can't get people to have that kind of emotion, and it's very obvious, when people are paid protesters. It's,
Well,
just
it would
that
have been
kind.
interesting if I can interrupt you, Dan. If we
Go
could
ahead.
have, like, we looked at that demonstration that JPEP did in Cité Soleil. Didn't we do that? And at one point, we
Yes.
were thinking to sort of juxtapose that demonstration where clearly the people's heart was not in it. They were sort of there, but maybe they were going to get, I don't know, 1,000 gourd or something for coming out, or T-shirt. But yeah, there was just no heart in it. And then compared to these G9 rallies, which we show in the film, but I don't think we had time to do that.
Right. And so the the pastor who they accused the G9 of kidnapping ended up being released, and no one, it was dropped then. Nobody said, "Oh, see, the G9 released him," or anything like that. It was just kind of forgotten.
Yeah.
So it was a very, very obvious ploy. So I think we can show, for one thing, I want to show the latest dispatch, which I we subtitled and put on Twitter today. The latest dispatch from Cherizier in this battle with JPEP. So give me 1 second. We're gonna get that one going. If I can manage the controls here. Okay, here we go. And are we in the way? No, I think. No, that's not what we want. We don't want you big. Okay, somehow I got you big again, Kim.
Oh boy.
Okay, that's not what we want either. But look, I'm going to turn us off again. We'll be right back so we can watch this.
Nous-mêmes, nos forces révolutionnaires, Genève en famille et alliés, main tout, nous choisissons de lancer bataille pour libérer le pays en bas de kidnappeurs. Avant d'arriver sur l'autre monde qui est le peuple dans la misère, dans le grand dans classe là, nous lancer bataille contre kidnappeurs, contre voleurs. Bataille là à peine lancée. Nous ne pas parler en pile, j'en nous regarder, nous avons ça n'a fait là, nous avons mené. Et puis, ou même, pour ces journalistes qui cachent au Canada, qui ont dit que balle là, pour prendre balle. Ok? Les gens qui suite ça, tout le monde est ensemble. Les gens qui étaient ça, personne ne va pas ensemble. Nous sommes force révolutionnaire, Genève en famille et alliés, main et tout. Bataille là, faites lancer et faut que le pays a libéré. Merci en pile. Ou même quand vous regardez vidéo ça, mes grands monde sous.
So the key bit in that, that short dispatch that Cherizier sent out, I believe this morning, is, to me, when he
This
says, I mean,
afternoon, yeah.
everyone, yeah, okay, yeah, this afternoon, where he says, that we, the G9 for short, chosen to launch the struggle to liberate this country from the kidnappers. So he's talking about, basically the gangsters, the JPEP, the criminal networks, before we turn to the other people who are keeping the people in misery, hunger, and squalor. So that's implying that next up is the oligarchs who are funding the JPEP, who the JPEP are operating on behalf of. Um,
Yeah.
in particular, I mean, we know that Reginald Boulos, the very closely tied to the U.S. oligarch, one of the most powerful in Haiti, who we were discussing before, he is one of the funders of the JPEP, and he has said that publicly on the radio. And so Cherizier actually knows Boulos and has had a relationship with him before. A few years ago,
Just to clarify,
he
it
met
doesn't
with
say
him.
he's funding JPEP. He says he's funding T. Gabriel.
Ah, okay. So T. Gabriel being the leader of JPEP. So
Yeah, right.
pardon me, I misspoke. So um, but I think that's really significant, and frankly, it's a major departure from the attitude that Cherizier had expressed towards us that you'll see in the documentary when it comes out, which is Cherizier's position, and Kim, you can elaborate on this, was basically like, I need all of these armed groups to unite so we can take on the bourgeoisie together and have a revolution. So even, these guys are attacking my neighborhood and killing people in my neighborhood. I don't want to fight them. And he was taking a very passive, not completely passive, but largely passive, defensive approach. And obviously now he's taken, again, a different posture. So do you want to discuss that, Kim?
Yeah, well, this is the irony, is that they portray him as a monster, etc. But really, he's the conciliator. He's the one who has this. I could almost call it an innate class consciousness and solidarity, because he sees these are people of my class. He said that to us in many of our interviews, a lot of them which didn't even get into the film. But he was saying, these are the same people as me. I grew up with these people. These are, we can win them over, and he wants to. So he has a deep class affiliation and affection even for his enemies. And in many ways, as we've had explained to us by many people, he's the softy. There are other guys in the G9 who are saying, we got to go take it to these guys and take them out and raise that neighborhood. And he said, no, 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 these people are living there. We have to, so he's trying to win them over. And we do have that speech in the film where he says, we're trying to win over these ones who haven't joined us, and to have them stop their bad ways and join and turn their weapons not against the people, kidnapping, robbing, not against us, fighting us, but against the bourgeoisie. That's our real enemy, the bourgeoisie. And that's his refrain, is we have to fight the bourgeoisie in Haiti, which is the one responsible for our state, for all of our poverty.
Right, exactly. I think actually now is a good time to show the trailer for Another Vision, is the title of the documentary. Another Vision Inside Haiti's Uprising. So let's go ahead and show the trailer for that. I'm going to make it full screen, and once again remove Kim and I from the video so you can see everything. But this is the trailer, which we actually released several months ago, for our forthcoming documentary. And Matthew Rains, thank you very much for the super chat. We really appreciate the support. Anybody who we do see the comments, so anyone who wants to do a super chat to support us, we'll be sure to read the comments and answer questions. Any questions in general we can take and do our best to answer them. But let's watch the trailer for Another Vision. And
a nation in turmoil, ravaged by empire, neighborhoods at war, the state on the brink of collapse, revolution in the air. A man at the center of it all. To some, a villain.
Jimmy Cherise alias Barbecue, li te vle guide nous non façon pour nous voler même javel.
He's a criminal. He's not revolutionary.
To others, a hero.
He is a revolutionary leader.
C'est grâce à déporter avec Monsieur Barbecue qu'a fait vivre.
Join us as we seek to uncover the truth about the uprising in Haiti today.
Pas qu'à avancer devant là, devant avancer à tirer sur. Attention. Wait, watch out, come here.
They have to have a revolution. It's got to happen.
okay, we're back. I hope everyone liked that. I was pretty excited to watch that trailer. I haven't watched it for a few months, and that I gotta say that was pretty exciting. I'm excited to see this documentary. Yeah. So not to pat ourselves on the back, but yeah. So that's the trailer for our documentary. It's a 3-part series. Each episode is an hour long, and we really leave no stone unturned in kind of debunking and challenging propaganda surrounding the G9 and what's happening in Haiti. And so, someone like, for example, myself, who 1 year ago knew very little about Haiti, had never been to Haiti, can really understand how, the situation the country is in today, and what is happening.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I wanted to say was that, we have no guarantees. This is a very nascent, a very embryonic movement that is happening. We don't know. They could kill Cherizier. We don't know what that would mean. They could infiltrate it, blow it up. Could they buy it off? We don't know. There's a lot we don't know, and we can't foresee the future. It's not to say, this is it. And so, but it's definitely a genuine movement. This is not anything, as Cherizier said, as I quoted him in the article this week. He said, "We are our own boss. We are autonomous. We decide. We're not acting for anybody. We're nobody's tool." So this is the essence of it. It is really important, I think, as a model for, and I think this is why, in a way, the U.S. Embassy, the U.S. State Department, the U.S. Military Industrial and CIA complex identified, even before us, that this guy is a problem, that this guy is a danger. And they're going after him, hammer and tongs. And so we are really taking the first step, the informational war, of trying to clarify people and say, listen, this is what is going on, and let's not be duped. Let's not be, turned into zombies chasing our tail, to mix a lot of metaphors, and be against this guy who we should be embracing.
Right. There's anything can happen at any point, but
Yeah.
this is one of the kind of unique things, I suppose, about um a bunch of, such a disorganized uh bunch of groups that have come together and really kind of united around one person. There's not really an ideological backing, or there's not an ideological foundation for the G9, other than, ending the immense suffering that Haitians have been subjected to. There is kind of a national, Cherizier, as you'll see in the documentary, does speak in national terms.
As
And
a
he,
nationalist.
yeah, as a nationalist, and he does make reference to revolutionaries actually throughout, particularly in not Latin America, but not only in Latin America. So
Mhm.
he certainly kind of he doesn't have all the Marxist Leninist theory that a lot of us are kind of accustomed to with famous revolutionaries. Of course, Che Guevara being the obvious one in Cuba, just a little bit to the west, but he is a product of his experience, and he's an extremely intelligent and, as Kim said, articulate figure. But really anything can happen at any point. So we've put an enormous amount of effort into this documentary, and we're trying to get it out as fast as possible. Um, I want to talk about, Kim. I want to put this in the context of the assassination of President Jovenel Moise, which was on July 7th, just of 2021. So just over a year ago. And this remains obviously a major trauma for Haiti, and a huge mystery that many suspect was an inside job for a number of reasons. One of which is that there was no resistance from Moise's security detail, the Presidential Guard, and he was assassinated in his home. And so you wrote an article early in May, so about a little more than 2 months ago, called "Is the U.S. Covering Up Its Role in Moise's Murder?" I'm going to see if I can pull your article up. And, I wanted to kind of ask you, I mean, I think this would surprise very few people if the U.S. actually had a role in this. And, um, so what exactly, so yeah, tell me about your article. What is the potential US role here, or what leads you to believe that the US is covering up its role?
Well, that picture there is a picture of Jovenel Moise receiving the letters of credential from the Russian ambassador the month before his death. Obviously, the U.S., who had designs on Russia, which we see in their full-blown form today, was not happy with that. And in fact, we've learned from sources close to the Moise uh, uh, group that Moise was finding that the U.S. was just not what helping him in the way he had hoped, and he was looking to mend fences with Nicolas Maduro because, well, just to give people a little background, Haiti had received from Venezuela between 2008 and 18 some $4 billion worth of cheap crude, and it was sold through the Haitian state. And the state, to sweeten the deal, was able to keep 40% of that revenues from that in a fund called the Petro-Caribe Fund, which was repayable after 25 years at 1% interest. Well, the Martelly government, which preceded Jovenel, burned through about 3/4 of that money. And so Jovenel ended up very much with an empty bag when he came into power. He was in 2017, same time as Donald Trump, and Trump levied sanctions on Venezuela, making it impossible for them to sell their oil to Haiti, and as a result, the Petrocaribe deal in Haiti finished. So Jovenel started to rethink. Let me not. I'm jumping ahead in the story, or I'm jumping over an important part of the story. So Jovenel was really on the ropes, and the U.S. came, or Donald Trump actually summoned him to Mar-a-Lago and said, "Listen, dude, you got to get with the program. You got to stop recognizing um, Venezuela, and you have to come and recognize Juan Guaido, our fake president that we're trying to sell, and become sort of the hood ornament on this tank of U.S. Destruction in Venezuela." So he played that role for a while, but he started to find that it wasn't really working in his interest. He wasn't. It was one making the Haitian people madder than hornets, and secondly, he wasn't getting that much rendement, as they say in Creole, uh, that much back for what he was doing. So he was investigating, according again to people within the Moise group, uh, reopening relations with Venezuela. And his trip to Turkey, again, a month before his killing, was apparently to try to increase or get a meeting with the Russians and see what kind of deal he could work out there. So the motive is there, we could say, plus the fact that he was starting to really go after a lot of the U.S. allies, like Reginald Boulos, who we previously mentioned, like Dmitry Vorb, who is another bourgeois figure who has his own sort of gangs, which he's been using to fight the G9, and who, the U.S. wasn't happy that Jovenel Moise was warring with these guys, and in fact, they were defending a lot of these bourgeois that Jovenel was saying, "Listen, you have a sweetheart deal, you have to pay up." But really, one of the strongest cases is a fellow called Franz Large, who is cited at the end of this article, who was with the famille Lavalas, the Lavalas family of Jean-Bertrand Aristide. He's got unimpeachable credentials, is very well known and very outspoken. And he was speaking to Jovenel, and he said this was an operation carried out by the U.S. Secret Services, by the CIA, etc., basically to get Jovenel out of the way and get the situation that we have now. In fact, Ryan Grimm of The Intercept, and at the time The Hill, I forget under whose banner he published it, but he did an interesting interview with the former ambassador to Haiti, was saying we have to get the president out of the way and adopt the prime minister option. That's exactly what they have now. They have this Ariel Henry, this sort of prime minister who's without any holds barred on him, running amok, just running the country into the ground. So there's all that, and so what Franz Large said was that this was really the U.S. May not have organized it precisely, maybe didn't pay for the Colombians that came in and actually machine gunned Jovenel Moise, but it was a wink and a nod. They may have very well been aware of the operation. It's very hard to believe that the U.S. Embassy, the fourth largest U.S. embassy in the world, you look at its roof, it's covered with all kinds of antennas. They're obviously got to be monitoring everything in this country of 12 million people, the size of New York City. It's very hard to believe that 30 Colombians talking on their cell phones and texting and whatever all day, that they didn't have a clue that they were up to something. And we know as a precedent that 20 years earlier, they had learned about a coup that was going to happen against former President René Préval, and they tipped him off, and René Préval went after the guys. But this one, Jovenel Moise had no. Anyway, there's a lot of circumstantial evidence. And final thing that I forgot to mention was that in the case of a guy called Palacios, Mario Antonio Palacios, one of the Colombian triggermen, who's being held in Miami, the U.S. the government, basically the CIA, has basically sealed evidence that cannot be given to Palacios's defense attorney because it will negatively impact U.S. national security. Nobody knows what this means, but in this piece, we quote people who say this is obvious that the CIA was involved, and this is defending the CIA. So there's a lot of
I have the piece pulled up.
Yeah.
I have sorry to interrupt you, Kim. I have this, these passages pulled up. I'll just read it off so everyone can understand. Okay. The U.S. Justice Department successfully sealed evidence last week, and this is back in early May, so referring to late April, in its prosecution of Colombian mercenary Mario Antonio Palacios. And so this is basically an act that is used to, according to Mike Vigil, former head of DEA operations in the Caribbean, the government is pretty much telegraphing CIA involvement, is what he said. So, that's pretty much from the horse's mouth there. And I mean, again, it's almost impossible to believe that the U.S. Embassy, as you said, would have no knowledge of this massive, enormous operation going on right under its nose. So at the very least,
5 miles away from the embassy. I mean,
right. At the very least, and and we know they have the technology to be listening in to all kinds of phone lines, and so the arrival of 30 Colombians is palling around, and considering the U.S. trains Colombians and Colombia exports its mercenaries. Colombia is known for sending ex-soldiers around the world to participate in all kinds of wars and military operations. It's pretty. It seems clear that the U.S. at least knew what was going on, may have turned a blind eye, a wink and a nod, or possibly more. So, will we ever have the smoking gun evidence? Maybe not. But it's very, very suspicious. And there's, as you said, Kim, a lot of circumstantial evidence that points to the U.S. at least knowing about the plot against Jovenel Moise and possibly having a hand in it. Anything do you want to add on that?
No, I think that's it. I mean, it's not the first time the U.S. has dispensed with a former ally. Just on the same island in the Dominican Republic, there was a dictator for decades, Rafael Trujillo, who was very close with the CIA. They even helped whisk away one of his Columbia University professor opponents out of New York City. He was taken to Dominican Republic with CIA collusion and basically boiled alive by, and then his body was fed to sharks. This is the kind of guy that Rafael Trujillo was. Well, that was in the mid-50s, and eventually they found that Trujillo was becoming something of a liability, particularly after the Cuban Revolution, and they machine gunned him in his car. So this is, kind of par for the course of the U.S. Like Kissinger said, the U.S. didn't have friends, it has interests. And when Jovenel Moise wasn't working out, well, we got to ditch you. I mean, we could also take the case of Miguel Diem in Nam back in 1963. He was put in place by the U.S., by the CIA, and taken out by the CIA. Same thing, machine gunned in the back of his car. And so the U.S. has no problem.
This one comes to mind for me.
There you go. Okay, there you go. Okay, yeah, right.
Infamous Saddam Hussein,
right.
Donald Rumsfeld handshake back when it was, Saddam was useful to attack Iran. So of course, that's a key one. Also, Manuel Noriega and Panama.
Panama, yeah.
Big pal of the United States until he wasn't.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean there's so many examples throughout recent history.
Yeah.
Now, the other major development is in the background of this ongoing battle in Cité Soleil and Port-au-Prince. The UN Security Council was supposed to vote actually today on on renewing the mandate of BINU, which is the United Nations Integrated Office in Haiti. Um, and because of this battle, they said they're delaying the vote until Friday. So, um, can you explain what BINU is, who heads it? Obviously, very important, and what is the significance of the UN and BINU in Haiti, and what is the general feeling among the masses towards BINU?
Okay. The masses are very hostile to the UN. Basically, for 21 of the last 28 years, Haiti has been under UN military occupation, and it hasn't been good for them. Children have been raped. There's lots of what they call UN children around, basically the soldiers of this occupation force, which would have kids with Haitian mothers and then just leave them to their own devices. And not to mention just the repression and uh,
Assassination.
violence,
Right.
assassination,
Right.
killings, rapes, you name it, that happened under an occupation. Well, and all occupations, as we know, are brutal. So Haiti had the troops come in. Well, the troops came in the day after, or actually before, Jean Bertrand Aristide was kidnapped from his home by a U.S. SEAL team on February 29th, 2004, whisked off to the Central African Republic. And the U.S. Already had its troops there, along with Canada and France, its two sidekicks in Haiti, junior partners. They occupied the country, just like they did back in the 1990s, for 3 months, and then they handed it off to the UN, whose soldiers cost half the price of paying U.S. Marines, and because Sri Lanka and Paraguay and other countries that were giving, they don't. So
You're
they
cutting.
they left the UN in place. I'm cutting.
You're cutting out a. Yeah, you were
Is it?
cutting out a little bit, but I think it's. I'll tell you if it
Okay.
continues, but we hear you.
Okay. Good. So
Go ahead.
So this UN force was established by the Security Council under what's called Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, which allows the UN Security Council basically to order troops into a country to preserve world peace. Now, theoretically, it's a violation of the Charter because that's supposed to be in a conflict between nations, between two countries, if Dominican Republic and Haiti were fighting, for example. But in this case, it was just an internal problem in Haiti. So basically, they were violating the Charter, both in the 1994 occupation and the 2004 occupation. But, the U.S., as they say, they have a rules-based order, not a law-based order. So they came in, took over the U.S. and France and Canada took over in March, and then March 1st, and then on June 1st, the MINUSTA, which stands for the UN mission in Haiti, took over and was headed mostly by Brazilians. Again, this was not an accident because Lula thought he could somehow prove his chops by going in and helping to occupy Haiti for the U.S., and maybe this would win Brazil a seat on the Security Council, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, we don't need to go into all those details. But long story short, they used mostly Brazilians, Argentinians, and Chileans with a bunch of other countries to run this occupation for not 6 months as it was originally proposed, but for 15 years. This went on from 2004 to 2017. It was the MINUSTA, and then they turned it. They said, okay, we're going to send the soldiers back home, and we're just going to have policemen do it. And for 2 years, they had what was called the Mini-Juste, which was another mission. Anyway, that was all under Chapter 7, where basically the guns are in the hands of the foreigners. But Jovenel Moïse, to his credit, said, no, listen, you got to take us off. It's been 13 years. You got to give us back control. And so it was downgraded to Chapter 6, where the UN has an office in Haiti, and that's called the BNU, the UN, the Bureau des Nations Unies en Haïti, the Bureau Intégré Nations Unies en Haïti. But the BNU is just advisory. It can negotiate, it can mediate, it can suggest, but it doesn't have the executive power. Now, right now, what they're trying to do, the U.S. wants to bring back on the Chapter 7, where they got the troops in there and they're running the show. But China's saying no. They're saying not only that, even the BNU, you can't have a year. This is dragging